Good morning, grade 9. Welcome back. I hope you enjoy your sem break. And today, sem break is now over and we will proceed to our discussion in art. So this is the lesson 4 entitled Renaissance Art. So this is the topic that we did not discuss last October because we don't have enough time back then. And the topic outline for this one is we have Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, and Donatello. So we will discuss their artwork during Renaissance period. But before that, let's define first what is a Renaissance or a Renaissance art. Renaissance is a French word for rebirth. This is the period that marked the transition from the Middle Ages to modern times. In many parts of Europe, early Renaissance art was created in parallel with late medieval art, and this was the period of economic progress. Yung mga tao dito ay nagkakaroon sila ng enthusiasm sa pag-aaral ng ancient philosophy and artistic values. Kaya ito rin yung era kung saan nagkaroon ng great artistic and intellectual achievement. And the two main features of the Renaissance are individualism and humanism, which affirms the worth of morality. Yung individualism, ito yung principle of being independent and self-reliant. And humanism naman, this is the development of human virtue. Yung mga Renaissance painters, they depicted real figures at yung mga sculptures nila, natural portraits of human beings. And the Renaissance art, this is the period wherein they use landscape as a background for the figures was added and became popular. The science perspective was for a while. Ayan, ayan. The science of Wait, ayan. The science of perspective was also developed during this time and it helped in creating an illusion of distance and atmosphere. So may tinatawag tayong linear perspective and the aerial perspective. When we say linear perspective, this is the use lines or ito yung ginagamitan ng mga lines that converge at a center point to produce a sense of depth and distance. So ito yung example nung feature na ginagamitan ng linear perspective. Kung makikita nyo, nandito yung ating center point and ginagamitan siya ng line and nakakapag-produce siya ng depth or lalim. So, ginamit ito sa isa sa pinaka-famous Renaissance artwork which is The Last Supper. And The Last Supper, kung makikita nyo, ang center point niya is si Jesus Christ. And from here, meron siyang linear perspective kung saan nagpo-produce siya ng depth, kung saan nagkakaroon ng lalim and background yung sa The Last Supper. So as you can see, the Renaissance was a period of artistic experimentation and it brought man into full view, just like the human figure in Greek art. And this second one, so we have aerial perspective. When we say aerial perspective, this is the use of a gradual change of tone from dark to light as the landscape moves further. So this is an example naman ng aerial perspective. So as you can see from here, the object in this painting or the subject in this painting are darker. But as the paintings move further or habang papalayo siya ng papalayo, the color of it became lighter. So, yon yung technique sa paggamit ng aerial perspective. It's darker to lighter. This is another one na picture kung saan nagpapakita ng aerial perspective. So, there's two sides of perspective will be the one or will be the two that you will be used and for your PA2-1 and art. Now let's proceed to the Renaissance artists that I've mentioned a while ago in our topic outline. First is Michelangelo. So the full name of Michelangelo is Michelangelo di Ludovico Buonarroti Simoni. Teacher, i-memorize po ba yung full name ni Michelangelo? No, na. Hindi niya kailangan i-memorize. O you only need to remember his first name, which is Michelangelo. So he is considered as one of the greatest sculptor of all times. Nakagawa siya about 400 sculptures, kaya kinukonsidered siya bilang the greatest artist of all time. Michelangelo was less interested in schooling than watching the painters at nearby churches. And he was an Italian Renaissance painter, sculptor, architect, poet, and engineer. So, the nickname that Michelangelo developed during his lifetime was Tu Divino or Second Divino. As a direct translation, it means the divine. His work was loved by everyone in every class, culture, and demographic. And drawing, he draw what he saw there dun sa kanyang pinapanood sa nearby churches. According to his earliest biographers, kung ano yung kanyang nakikita, yun yung kanyang nagiging subject sa kanyang mga paintings or sa kanyang mga artwork. And Michelangelo produced numerous works of art during his extraordinary active life. Some of Michelangelo's creations rank among the most well-known art pieces that ever produced. They consist of the Pieta in St. Peter's Basilica, and the other one is the David or the David statue, wherein uh, David, ito yung marble sculpture that was formerly in a Florence Square or matatagpuan sa Florence Square but it is now housed in the Accademia Gallery. And this is a huge frescoes. The ceiling of when we say frescoes, ito yung mga watercolor painting and the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and The Last Judgment are among his most well-known works of art. Di ba napakadaming artwork ni Michelangelo? So, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina na one of his famous statue or sculpture is the David by Michelangelo. This is picture na 'to makikita yung whole picture sa inyong book. So, available siya do'n, but I only use the half body of it. The David we are shown here is a muscular man who is not clothed, meaning nude man. He holds the stones in one hand and the slingshot in the other hand, and his veins showing in his arms and hands, perhaps because they were regarded more aesthetically significant for onlookers who would see the statue from a distance. While it was placed up on the cathedral facade, his hands and head appeared to be disproportionately enormous for his torso. He also seems to have a left leg that is much too long for his torso because it crosses the rocky base on which he is standing, and it draws attention to the line of This leg, which is crucial to David's contrapuntal stance. If you can remember the contrapuntal stance, this is the pose wherein the other leg is at rest and the other one nandun lahat yung weight or yung bigat. Michelangelo has portrayed David in such a way that his body reacts to the attitude he is in, much like the old Hellenistic and Roman sculpture that were masters at authentically expressing the human anatomy. David has his weight on his right leg, leaving his left leg at rest. His hips have changed as a result, with one side being higher than the other. As a result, David's spine and midsection have slightly curved, and his right shoulder is slightly lower than his left. So yun yung tinatawag nating contrapposto pose. Another of his famous statues is the Pieta. Ito yung si Mama Mary holding Jesus Christ. Another one is the creation of Adam. This is also work by Michelangelo, and the creation of Adam is a fresco painting. And this painting can be found on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, painted between 1508 and 1512. And this artwork illustrates a story from the book of Genesis in which God gives life to the first man, Adam. His frescoes depict a series of scenes from the book of Genesis, including the birth of Adam by Michelangelo, which is a representation of Genesis 1 verse 26. Upon entering in the Sistine Chapel and looking upward to the center of the ceiling, one notices the pose of both God and Adam mirroring each other. So, ganyan yung Sistine Chapel kung saan makikita mo yung creation of Adam ni Michelangelo. Now let's proceed to Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, known as the ultimate Renaissance man because of his intellect, interest, talent, and his expression of humanism and classical values. He is regarded as one of his history's finest artists and possibly the most talented person to have ever lived. Like Michelangelo, he dissected corpses to understand the human body's skeleton and muscular structures in order to accurately depict body movement and gesture in his paintings. His drawings of the Vitruvian Man is considered a classic due the Vitruvian Man around 1490, but he was influenced by the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius. The original idea portrayed how a man's proportions leads or relate to geometry. Vitruvius thought that peoples made the best models for proportion in architecture. Although Leonardo da Vinci used Vitruvius as an inspiration, his depiction of the Vitruvian Man has a very different connotation. Da Vinci thought that Vitruvian Man was a symbol of him's role in the universe rather than tying man to architecture. This encompasses how people interact with the environment and the universe. Leonardo da Vinci Vitruvian Man merged biology and mechanics in revolutionary approach that would not be that would not be known until decades after his death. Leonardo used a lightning and shadow technique known as chiaroscuro to suggest the shape of his figure rather than enclosing them in lines. The forms and edges were no longer distinguishable in this shading technique since they merged with one another. Additionally, he played with a modeling method known as esfumato, which involved softening harsh edges with tonal gradation. Now let's proceed to his famous and known artworks starting with the Last Supper. The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, res- uh, he received a commission to paint the Last Supper toward the end of his stay in Milan. And this is the most reproduced religious painting of all time. The Last Supper refers to the last meal Jesus ate with his disciple before his betrayal and arrest. The Last Supper is recorded in the Synoptic Gospel Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So this is the meal. The meal is the last time Jesus spent with his disciple, and he tells them what will happen or what is to happen. The biblical story states that Jesus sent two of his disciples to prepare the lunch before gathering the entire group in the upper room. One of them would turn on him, and he warned them na may magbibetray sa kanya, and Jesus informed them that the bread and the wine were his body and his blood of the covenant. After blessing them and giving them to them, uh, eat eat and drink. So the two aspects of the Last Supper have been traditionally depicted in Christian art. The Christ revelation to his apostle that one of them will betray him and their reaction to this announcement, and the institution of the sacrament of the Eucharist with the communion of the apostle. Another famous portrait of Leonardo da Vinci is the Mona Lisa. So this is the most known portrait, Mona Lisa, in 1499. When he moved to Florence, and uh, it is now hung in the Louvre Museum, Paris, where it remained an object of pilgrimage in the 21st century. The Mona Lisa is perhaps the most recognizable piece of art in the world, but have you ever wondered just why the Mona Lisa is so famous? They said that the Mona Lisa that was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, believed to be a portrait of Lisa Gherardini, the wife of Francesco Giocondo. And did you know that for such a famous painting, it is surprisingly small? It only measured just 30 inches by 21 inches. Can you imagine that? In centimeter, it is only 77 centimeter by 53 centimeter. So, ganito siya kaliit. And another information about Mona Lisa is, unlike many artwork of the time, the Mona Lisa is not painted on the canvas. Instead, she is painted on a poplar wood panel. While this may seem odd, keep in mind that Leonardo was a sculptor and artist who had painted on large wall of plaster throughout much of his career. So, yung pagka-carve or pagpipaint, pagdodraw sa wooden panel probably wasn't much of a stretch for him. Mona in Italian, meaning it is a polite form of address originating as Madonna, similar to mom or madam or my lady in English. The softly sculpted face of the subject demonstrates Leonardo's mastery of esfumato. Ito yung application of fine shading, as well as his comprehension of the musculature and the skull beneath the skin. The perfectly crafted hair, the expertly painted veil, and the meticulous depiction of folded linen reveal Leonardo's keen observation and unending patience. Kaya hindi natin makakaila kung bakit isa ito sa kanyang famous artwork na up until now, kilalang kilala nga naman talaga. So we will proceed to the third one, which is Raphael. Raphael was an Italian painter and architect of the High Renaissance period, and his work was admired for its clarity of form and ease of composition, and for its visual achievement of the interpreting the divine, incorporating Christian's doctrines. Raphael's Madonna and Child with the Book, this one, depicts the Madonna and Child as a pyramidal structure wherein the child figures is enclosed by the arc of Madonna silhouette. The hands that hold the book are touching, drawing attention to the book's position in the middle of the frame. The nonce, which is this one, which is repeated every day by all monastic group, is introduced in the book's inscription. Christ's crucifixion and death are honored by the nuns, as he considered his sacrifice as man's savior. The Christ child has his eyes fixed on heaven, and Raphael's has created a meditation piece of profoundly quality, which explains why Raphael, Madonna, and child painting were in such high demand. Throughout his career, he painted many Madonna and child images using different painting materials to celebrate the tender emotion between a young mother and her child. Kaya maraming version yung Madonna and child, and this one, yung pinakita ko sa inyo, is yung with the book. Madonna and child with the book. Ah, eto pa yung other example ng artwork ni Raphael, which is yung the marriage of the Virgin and yung the transfiguration. As you can see, most of his painting, like what I've said a while ago, it was incorporating or related sa mga Christian doctrines. And the last Renaissance artist that we will be discussing is Donatello. And his full name is Donata di Niccolo di Beto Bardi. Donatello, he was one of the Italian great artists of the period. And Donatello is an Italian sculpture or sculptor from Florence, and he is the foremost sculptor of the period. Ginamit niya yung kanyang talent and unique style para makapag-produce and makapag-impose ng lifelike statues. Naka-receive rin siya ng training in 1406 as an assistant of Gilberti, who was a noted sculptor at his time, and Donatello's early statues showed traces of late Gothic influence such as idealized forms, long graceful lines, and expressionless faces. So he worked mainly in stone, bronze, and wood. Na-adapt rin niya yung contrapose to pose na in-apply niya sa kanya mga ginawang statue. So kung makikita niyo may version rin si Donatello ng David. And another of his statue is the Gatamelata. And Gatamelata is one of the famous statues that Donatello ever done. And he was tasked by the heirs of a famous condottiero to sculpt this bronze equestrian statue, and this will be placed in the public square, and this statue was the first of its kind of the classical age. So this is the work of Donatello. And that's it. Thank you for listening, grade 9, and I hope you learned something for today's lesson. And later on our live discussion, we will have the note and the drill for your quiz 2-1, and we will start your PA 2-1. So don't forget to bring your material so that you can start na your PA 2-1 in art. Happy Thursday, everyone, and have a nice day.